Djibouti. I always forget how to pronounce that, but but yeah, tonight we're going to talk about the recent decision in Ireland to legalize abortion. So let's begin. What are your guys' thoughts on it?
Well, I mean, from obviously as a person that is a part of secular pro-life, and I obviously take the position that abortion isn't a good thing to do. I think it does have some bad consequences to it. There was recently a study I showed out where people that actually do have abortion tend to have more mental health problems.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah, you need to link that to me on my, when we're done with this.
yeah. I'll go through my secular pro-life movement and I'll send it to you.
Sure.
But I've done a lot of research, and a lot of the talking points of the pro-choice movement are just so stupid. They repeat stuff that's been debunked for a long time.
Yeah, yeah. Like
Like,
one of the common arguments is that if you're against abortion, you're just this backwater religious nut. When in actuality, any common sense person can be pro life because you could just look at demographics and see why being pro life is the rational and sane decision to go.
well, here
Exactly.
in the states, abortion rally. I mean, well, here's the thing I don't like about them because they're a business and they prey on the because they know their audience who's going to do it more.
Right, the
You
Planned
know,
Parenthood.
yeah, they know their audience.
Right.
That's why like 80% of all the abortion clinics are in financial destituted areas.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Right.
not to mention they set up
I heard
shop.
too.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I heard that they like Planned Parenthood. They mostly set up shop in like poor black communities. So like
Yep.
you'll have a higher percentage of African Americans who get abortions.
They are
Yeah, I mean,
racist as all could be. They're
Yeah, I heard
on
Margaret Thatcher is like a vitriolic racist.
I don't think they're racist. I think they're just they have it's a sad unfortunate thing, but I wouldn't say racist, but I just say they're more business oriented. Like it's not really about the race, it's about the money and where it's going to come
Right.
from.
It's like
The
the
people
private
that
prison system.
the people that have more money are less likely to have get the abortion sad enough, while people that don't, that live in a poor black neighborhood are more likely to feel like they're not financially capable of having a child.
Right.
So they know that their audience and they know who they're going for.
Yeah, definitely.
They're
well,
not gonna put they're not gonna put it in a rich white neighborhood because they know business won't be booming there.
Right.
no, more or less the business of adoption would be booming there. One of my
Yeah,
best friends, he's a, I don't know if he was a survival, he survived an abortion, but he um, was adopted by quite wealthy people in his life, and they do a lot of that. And that's one thing I don't like about the pro-abortion movement is they seem to villainize Christians, but it's Christians at the same time. And I know they would agree with us on a moral level that Christians are the ones doing the adoption or the adopting for the most part. You look at the statistics. It goes to wealthy families that can support these children. So,
Yeah,
I
definitely.
know. And well, I mean, and Christian. Well, I mean, you can really say, not Christians, but people that are more financially secure.
true.
So you mean just to throw the secularist a bone there, someone you can make the argument that it's not their Christianity, but it's the fact that they're more financially secured to have
And
children.
right, I think that's a part of it too. That
Yeah, I mean, because you don't really know plenty of poor people that are just going to go out and just adopt a kid.
well, yeah.
So,
Although I've seen some
I
cases, but
mean,
they're not as common as those who can actually take care of a child and are financially stable enough to.
Right. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, I'm just, I like throwing the, like, whenever it is, whenever it needs to be brought up, I do like throwing the bone out there because, if I don't, they will.
True. And I'd rather have you do it instead of be like, well, actually, albino. Just, piss off.
Yeah. So, I mean, it always just needs to be just put out there as like another option with it. And like another thing that really does give me, because they'll make the same argument like that was made before even the sign, like, because like one big argument they'll say is it's not human. That was the original argument. That was originally why abortion, like that was what the whole movement stood for, originally, was on the claim that the fetus was not a human.
Right. I heard that they switched. That's when they switched the term from unborn baby to fetus because it had more of a scientific, science-y type term.
Well, they switched it not from that, but they switched it from human, being human, to being a person.
Right.
Which they don't seem to understand the bad history. Like, personhood, in my opinion, is arbitrary.
Right.
And it's been used so often by racists and everything in order to dehumanize someone. Like, we have it in our like our record books where, in the United States, where they'll say, well, we, like, even the most vitriolic racist person back like during slavery time will say, oh, well, I perfectly agree that black people are humans.
Right.
But I don't think they're persons.
Right. Well, like they believe that black people were like, subhuman. That was the term.
Well, it reminds you a bit of what Hitler said. The Jews are most certainly right. They are a race, but they are most certainly not human. It kind of goes with the same idea. I get what you're saying.
Yeah, he believed that they were a parasitic race.
Yeah, and I mean, here's what's funny. They always bring it like, well, I know this is a little off topic, but I think it does because people are always going to bring up Christianity with that too, of course, and they'll say, well, Hitler may have not been a Christian, but he was influenced by Lutheranism, which was Christianity.
But that was only, like death use of Luther.
Well, I mean, here's what I put. Wasn't just Lutheranism. It was also German nationalism that took off at that time too.
Right. And that kind of secularized the earlier anti-Semitism of anti-Semitism in Europe.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, there was like, and here's what's funny. They always make it seem like Martin Luther invented anti-Semitism. No, that was around long before he was around. Hell, that was an old idea before he was even born.
Right.
The Black Plague.
Yeah,
the bubonic plague. They thought that the Jews were fucking poisoning the well and fucked up shit like that.
Well, Hitler believed that the Jews were in charge of like everything bad. He believed that they were in charge of ultra capitalism as well as the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia.
And what's funny about Hitler, because I've actually read his book, The Mein Kampf, and the Kampf or whatever. I keep saying it wrong, but
the Crump. Little John co-authored it.
Yeah, but I was saying, like, Hitler was a German nationalist first and foremost. That was what you can always make clear. He was, he very much, he felt that Jews were ruining Germany.
Right. That was the thing.
And he felt, and like, that was a big mindset that was back in his time, was German nationalism, where they felt like in order for German to be a prosperous nation, you had to get rid of the Jews.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. But they. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, we should get on to the stick on the abortion topic. I just,
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, let's get back to that. That's right. We always get somehow whenever Hitler is involved, it always gets
it's Godwin's law.
We always get off topic from that. Yeah.
I'm half German, so I get it all the time.
But yeah,
So, I mean, I only half hate the Jews.
yeah. But anyway, back to the abortion legalization in Ireland. I look at it as demographics. My biggest fear is that you see the migration crisis in Europe, right?
Yeah.
And
Well, it has more to do with well, here's what's funny. Like I always get this. The one argument is the argument from overpopulation.
right, but that's not true in Europe.
Well, no, but here's what's funny about that argument. In the United States, we actually are having less kids than we used to.
Right, but that's being taken up by
the reason why we're growing so exponential, so at a high rate, isn't because we're having more children. It's
because of
because
migration.
people are living longer.
Well, too.
They're living longer. So I mean, of course, there's gonna be more people because and here's what's funny, like less than 200 years ago, I believe the maximum capacity that was raised for humans was like 400 million. They said, the world could only sustain 400 million people.
Really? I never heard of that.
Like 400 to 800 million people was what they calculated back in like 200 years ago. And, now we know that to be false. And overpopulation only takes into consideration what are the available resources we have today to sustain people.
Right.
It doesn't take into account that maybe later on we'll have a better means of technology to support more people.
Right, definitely. Or, space exploration or something.
Well,
Yeah,
depending on if one thing I'm a big proponent for is hydroponics, and I believe that could save lives, or and keep people alive a lot longer. Like you said, technology is enabling people to stay alive much longer, and things like modern farming systems and so on.
Well, here's my problem. Like another big argument that they go for is for the pro-choice is like the bodily autonomy issue.
Right, my body, my choice.
Yeah, but here's what I always find like funny about that. Like they don't take that logic to its logical conclusion, because while they'll say at a certain point the woman's choice does not matter anymore. Like, you'll be hard pressed to find any pro-choicer that is pro-abortion at like the late term abortions.
Right. Yeah, but anyway, I wanted to go back to what my point was, is that you see the migration crisis going on in Europe, and the thing of it is, yeah, they have mass migration from particularly the Islamic world, because their fertility rates are not reaching replacement level.
Yeah.
And they're
we all know that atheists don't have children.
Right. And the population of most of the countries in Europe, but especially Western Europe, they're supposed to cut in half by 2100. So they need to replace the population somehow. So I don't know.
We all know the atheists there don't have children. They have negative birth rates.
Right. Which is kind of the irony of secularism.
Yeah, I mean, it's a Darwinian, for as much as atheists go on about evolution, it really freaking hates them.
It does. It never works to their favor. The biggest proponents for the dominance hierarchy, or the ones that always talk about it, are the schlubbiest types. And it's why support that when you yourself aren't getting fucking laid. You know what I mean? I mean, to be blunt.
Yeah, well, here, I actually have quotes on this, for the whole personhood argument. Because, since I'm a part of secular pro-life, I have to do this. Just in 1881 with George Canfield, he said the following in the American Law Review: "An Indian is not a person within the meaning of the Constitution." 1850,
Uh,
1858, the Virginia Supreme Court. In the eyes of the law, the slave is not a person.
What the fuck?
And
yeah.
lastly, 1936 German Supreme Court decision. The Reichsstücke, I can't pronounce that,
The
itself
Reichstag.
refused to recognize Jews as persons in the legal sense.
Right.
So, like, I can't remember I had another one. It was on, they did it with women too, where they said women are not persons. So, I mean, personhood seems to be just an arbitrary distinction used to find an excuse why to discriminate against someone. And it has like a perfect
Yeah, definitely.
100% failure rate. Like every time that we've done the argument in the past, we've later on came to regret it.
Right.
So I
And
mean,
so,
what are the amazing odds that out of the 1,000 times that the argument's brung up and been overturned later on, that this one will be the one that sticks?
right.
Definition of insanity.
And my biggest problem with abortion is, like I said, going back to the demographics, because I look at the European migration crisis, and if that's going to be the future, where they're going
My
to have,
biggest problem
all
with the
this.
abortion is, for one, the business itself. I think it's freaking corrupted.
Right.
I also think, obviously think that despite being, not like, here's what's fun. They always say, well, you're just a fundamentalist Christian. I say, no, I'm not, you idiot.
Yeah, yeah.
And, and besides, I'm a part of a secular pro-life, and our founding member is a very devout atheist.
Yeah. But,
So I mean, you can be an atheist and be pro-life. There's no
yeah.
real. I mean, there's a
You
big.
kind of call me conspiratorial, but I look at like this recent legalization of abortion in Ireland, and I see that it all kind of fits into a wider narrative of trying to get they're trying to get Irish people not to have children. So,
Well, it's not like
they.
It's not like they have a high.
What'd you say, Snowman?
It's not like they have a high birth rate to begin with. Birth rate
Well, no,
to
Ireland
begin
actually does have a high. Well,
Really?
Ireland does have actually a high birth rate. It's one of the. It's if it's. Yeah, I can't speak. It's I think the only country in Western Europe that does that's projected to actually grow by the year 2050.
I mean, every claim like the pro-choice movement has made has been a disaster. Like, like originally their claim was that making abortion legal would only mean taking a wait, damn it. They said that it would only make it a slight increase in death rates of children, because they would say only the unneeded ones would be there. But it turns out like no, it's been shown this is untrue, because abortion is considered the primary method of birth control.
Right.
And the annual number of abortions has increased 1,500% since legalization.
Oh my god. Yeah, Ireland actually had one of the. I was looking at the statistics. They actually had one of the lowest in all of Western Europe. But with this whole legalization, I wonder how long that's going to stay true.
I know. It's just seems very strange to me.
And it goes back to what I said with the demographic issue and the issue of mass migration. If the Irish people aren't going to have children, what is the government going to do to try to keep the economy going?
Well, they're going to do what the other European nations do. Just keep shipping in Muslims, and that'll solve itself.
That's what I'm getting at, Brass. Gee.
Gosh. Well, you remember that Kaplersky, what is it, the Kaplersky plan? If people haven't heard of that.
Oh, you're talking about the Kudinov-Kalergi plan.
Yeah. That and anybody in their right mind would, even if they're not a conspiracy theorist, should hate the idea. Well, except for Antifa, those types, because they hate anything white and European, which, you know, in and of itself isn't bad. It's just culture, but they see it as pure evil, which I don't understand.
Right. Well, you know, the thing about that is that, you know, I do dispute the term with like many white nationalists like Richard Spencer and all of them on, you know, the whole white genocide thing, because when I think genocide, I think like the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia. But, you know, what's going on isn't, you know, that kind of genocide. It's just it's just replacement via mass migration, which is still wrong and not going to work.
Right. And I can kind of see where he's getting at. I mean, yeah, there's obviously not a black people or whatever, Asians aren't rounding white people up and shooting them by the droves just because fuck white people. Even though some members of Antifa probably want to do that.
And that is happening in South Africa too.
Well, yeah, in South Africa, yeah, it's bordering on genocide because they're just fucking, you know, and it's sad because we won't accept those immigrants in. Europe won't accept those immigrants in who know their languages and know the culture and are similar in that respect and can actually be productive members of society, unlike a majority of the Islamic migrants coming from Syria and so on. No, they don't let the South African whites in. But albino, you're being a racist. No, it has nothing to do with race. You know, but they'll let all that.
The thing is, Germany wasn't letting in Ukrainian refugees, nor were they letting in Yazidi or Assyrian refugees from Syria. The Yazidis are an ancient they're an ancient religious sect. They're non-Christian. And the Assyrians are an ancient Christian sect, one of the oldest Christian sects in the entire world. And none of these other groups of people were invited by Angela Merkel in Germany for some fucking reason, even though all these people, the Ukrainians, Yazidis, and Assyrians, were legitimate refugees who needed sheltering from, you know, all those. In the case of the Assyrians and Yazidis, they needed sheltering from all those radical jihadist groups in the Middle East, like ISIS.
Right.
And the number, you want to know like the number of Ukrainian refugees that Angela Merkel invited into Germany during the Ukrainian war that's still going on?
Huh.
It was like 250 overall since 2014. Yeah, since 2014.
You know, it just makes me wonder, like, do they even care about their culture and their people?
Yeah.
Well, they use this propaganda to show these innocent children being, you know, starving in the borders of Turkey, going into Greece or something like that. And just,
that one kid who died on, it was like, I think the Turkish beach or something like that, or the Greek beach.
And granted, I don't think it was planted like some people. I think it was just, oh, that's convenient. We can use that to our advantage, our political advantage. I'm like,
well, from what I read, the guy's father happened to be an economic migrant who wanted to go to, I think, Germany or Greece because the dental care was better there. He didn't stay in Turkey because, you know, he thought the dentistry sucked there, which it does, but, you know, he thought that gave him the right to, you know, move him and his son to, you know, the European Union. And what happened is that his son somehow got caught up in the boat wreckage or something like that, and his son drowned as a result of his moronic stupidity.
If you think the record is bad there, you should try to go to England.
Oh,
definitely. Yeah. You all heard about Tommy Robinson being arrested.
Oh, that was bullshit. And yeah, from what I've heard, I don't know if this is necessarily the case, but the mainstream media in England or the UK was being told to be hush-hush about it. But the independent media got on it. It actually raised a bit of hell over in the UK. And there's been a lot of flag waving of flags of St. George as a result of this.
Yeah, the thing of it is that the United Kingdom is becoming increasingly, you know, a police state because you have a situation where, you know, Tommy Robinson's been recently arrested. Count Dankula, I think, has been arrested, you know, for, you know, his Nazi pug. and then, you know, what's their faces? Brittany Pettibone and Lauren Southern were actually banned from entering the United Kingdom.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, it just seemed like, you know, I just found it funny, like, with this whole, like, of course, with the atheists and stuff when it comes to the abortion clinics. They always are. I mean, I even got a study like showing that a benefit of going through with the pregnancy is you actually have your like it's it was a study done by David Reardon and Priscilla Coleman entitled Short-Term and Long-Term Mortality Rates Associated with First Pregnancy Outcome.
Really?
And in this paper, it shows that people that don't get abortions live longer than those who do by around 45%.
Right. I heard there was some similar studies conducted in Japan, actually.
Well, you got to think of the the suicide rate, and like you said earlier, the mental health rates and all the emotional problems that come with that. There's a lot of women who go through just mental hell because they've gotten abortion. Some don't, and I question their humanity at that point, because it's like, do you even care?
It's the dehumanization.
Right. And that could be that's definitely part of it too. But there are,
a lot of the Nazis didn't feel nothing after killing the Jews because they were conditioned into thinking them as not as humans.
Well, yeah, that's fucked up.
Right. Well, the thing with the Nazis is, on that particular case, is that many of the party ideologues felt nothing, but some of the lower members did really,
Well, I mean, if you want to know something funny, the Nazis didn't actually invent that. That's a common tactic that's used in any war, because if you're going to even go, just the United States did the same thing with Japan, where they dehumanized Japanese people to the point where
that's justified the internment camp.
Hell, they were so successful at the dehumanization of Japanese people that some soldiers actually brought home the skulls of Japanese people.
Right. They also brought home, like their watches and whatnot. They would pick off the dead bodies.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a big thing in any type of war where they dehumanize someone so that makes, so they don't feel guilty when they kill them.
Right. And also, even for those who do feel guilty, it gives them, the fear of coercion, so they still continue to precipitate in that bad action. Many like lower ranking SS officers, from what I read, they did feel guilty for what they were doing, but they went on with it anyway because quote unquote they were just following orders.
I was only following orders.
Yeah, that was the defense, I think, of Adolf Eichmann in the 1970s trial.
Yeah, I do think that did have a significant thing, because it did make you wonder, like, can you really blame someone for following through with an order like that they were given?
Right, and I think that's widely debatable too. I mean,
here's the thing here's what they established. They said, in order for you to be charged not guilty for doing a horrible crime during a war situation, is if you can show that you could have said no, and that you wouldn't have been punished for saying no, or your family wouldn't have been punished for saying no. Now, of course, if they find out, like, if you were a Nazi or someone, you found out, like, you couldn't say no, because if you did say no, you would, your life would be on the line, or your family's life would be on the line. And then, of course, they're not going to charge you with, the crimes you did.
Right.
Many, your hand was forced.
Nazi Germany, many, many Nazi party members were not prosecuted because they were just simply like party bureaucrats, and even many high-ranking Nazis, weren't prosecuted there as well. There was a similar case that happened in Cambodia under the Khmer Rouge. They have a similar tribunal that was set up for the Khmer Rouge genocide and war crimes. I think it's like I forget what it's called. But yeah, they have some good coffee and bananas.
Oh,
but
no, I'm thinking of Colombia.
Oh, you're talking about Colombia. Yeah, but I don't know.
I thought Cambodia, but Colombia is actually. Well, here's what's funny: Venezuela is actually the most coffee place in the world.
Yeah, now, unfortunately, they're running their economy down in the ground.
I've got a friend who lives there, and he absolutely hates it.
What, in Venezuela?
I know, but and whenever you actually look into it, like I remember deflating atheism when he talked about like how he knew a guy in a European country and he can't be a part of deflating atheism's group because he would be maliciously attacked by everyone there.
Really, what part of Europe?
I think Switzerland. I think he said not Switzerland, somewhere
Sweden.
Switzerland's
Sweden.
Sweden.
That's what.
Switzerland's religious.
Yeah, but Sweden, it's ironic because they have like blasphemy laws against, defaming atheism.
Yeah. But but my perfect atheist state, my utopia, fucking bullshit.
Anyway, I wanted to talk about there was some about the Khmer Rouge I wanted to talk. I mentioned or I wanted to mention was that it was a similar case in Cambodia under the Khmer Rouge. I mean, I believe it like since 2011, there's only been 3 prosecutions of high-ranking Khmer Rouge genocide criminals.
Well, I mean,
Most of the other cadres got off scot-free.
Yeah, I mean, like at least for like United Nations or stuff like that, they have a test that they go through where they ask questions and they look through the details. They want to find out like was the person's hand forced or not.
Right.
If their hand wasn't forced and they could say no, then yeah, they can be held responsible even if they were given an order.
Right.
But if the gun was held to their head or they were forced to, then of course you can't blame them.
Right. Like say if their families were, being threatened.
Yeah, so I mean, or their children or something were on the line, then yeah, of course we can't blame them then for having to do some bad acts. But it's a whole big mess when you're having to go through all that because that's the first thing they'll all jump on.
Right. And even there you can't exactly prove, one way or the other because they could just be, lying their ass off to cover their own asses.
Yeah.
Like,
so I mean, there's just a lot of things that just happen to go on with it. And, it's just like what I do find funny is like we were got into this before, but as much as like atheists talk about evolution, like how much they love it and stuff like that, they tend to support any notion that would make it harder for them to actually be anything of a group because they support abortion, which means they largely support abortion, which means that there's going to be less kids around them. They don't reproduce. They don't reproduce on a level anyway.
Well, ironically, it's mostly atheists that are getting abortions anyway, so it just hurts them in the long run, too.
Well, I mean, actually, that could be debatable. Catholics and atheists are pretty tied with that.
Oh.
Although one could make the argument that it's not really about it's about extrinsic. Like, damn it, how do I word that? There's a difference between
extrinsic religiosity.
Yeah, you can I know plenty of people that identify as Christian simply because that's what their parents identified as. That's how their grandparents identified as.
Right, nominal religiosity.
They don't really believe in anything Christianity. They just label themselves that. Now, intrinsic religiosity is different. We don't, that's not a big stat because there's typically 2 ways that we measure religiosity, where either we measure it through religious preference, what are their preferences, and another way we do it is we actually look how active are they in a religion.
God, that's my hands around
so when we actually do those tests, we actually find that we come to 2 different results.
Right.
We find that yes, on average, more people we find that more religious people, more people that prefer a religion, to have a religious preference, go to jail. But when we look at people that actually participate in activities pertaining, they participate in church activities, they actually have a lesser chance of going to jail.
Right. I've always tried to make that clear to many, militant atheists who, spout out the, 90% of prisoners are Christian. I say there's a huge difference between nominal cultural Christianity and active religiosity. Like my dad was only a nominal Christian. He never went to
I mean,
church
there's a big there's a big difference between someone that's a Christian simply because
by
like their
circumstance.
parents were
Yeah.
born in there. They've never looked into their religion past that,
Right.
and like if they're just doing it, there's a big difference between doing it for being a Christian for cultural reasons than there is for doing it because you actually do have a strong belief in it.
Right. Right. My dad, who was in Vietnam, on the army certificates, they put up your religion, and even though he never went to church a day in his life, they put him as I think it was like Methodist or something like that.
Well, Methodists are good people. I like them.
Yeah, that was his official religion, but he didn't go to church or anything.
When I was actually, here's my funny backstory when it comes to that. Like, I was raised in a non-denominational home. Like, when we did go to church, we pretty much went to any church that just happened to be by us. So,
Yeah.
like, if there was a Lutheran church near us, that would be our church. If there was a Baptist church near us, that would be our church.
Yeah.
So,
I was actually, sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, it's fine.
I had kind of a liberal Christian family. I mean, we had belief in God and so on. I would say it was more intrinsic than it was extrinsic, but it was kind of in between. We didn't really go to church all that much. And we never considered.
That's kind of how my father was brought up.
Yeah. But I wouldn't say we were extrinsic.
Right. Speaking of extrinsic religiosity, what do you guys think of like IP's, response to, the whole non sequitur debate with Matt Dillahunty?
I like that video. Yeah, he did really call out Matt Dillahunty for not being scholarly.
Yeah, I mean, Matt, I knew that someone, with the right kind of sources and debating skills, like inspiring philosophy, I knew he would totally steamroll Matt.
Yeah, I mean, well, here's the thing, like, inspiring philosophy, like, I've heard some people say I should debate him on some of the Christian doctrines that I disagree with him on. But I said, he's probably one of the few people I can pretty much say that he could pretty much beat me. I've actually, although I did sort of get annoyed at him in his debate with Godless Engineer. I felt like he used a dishonest tactic, even though I pointed out the flaw in it before the debate.
Inspiring philosophy?
Yeah, I mean, because he used the whole like he wanted to say like how historians don't use arguments from silence,
right?
And he brought up how trying to think, USCS Grant doesn't bring up slavery in his diary, and he brought up all those other examples, like, or why didn't Marco Polo mention the Great Wall,
right,
and stuff like that. And here's what I did: I pointed out to him beforehand, like an argument from silence can work only if you can show like why we would expect the evidence.
Right. Well, the problem I have with arguments of silence is that, that's just what there are. There isn't like a whole lot of evidence to support it.
Here's the thing. An argument from silence is twofold.
Right.
One, you have to establish, like, the easiest thing you can do is establish a silence.
Right.
Establish that, like, that's the easiest thing you can do.
Well, the problem I have...
Well, no, wait, let me finish with it. I'm saying, the first thing you do is you establish an actual silence. That's the easiest part. And two, you'd have to show that we would make the assumption, like, if statement was true, like, if X history event was true, what would we expect to see?
Right. Well, the problem I have with arguments of silence is that, I see many atheists try to use it, like, for example,
badly because, like, like, I mean, there's a time when an argument from silence is work, because when you can show, like, for example, if you told me today, like, and I was right by you, that an elephant stomped through your backyard
Mhm.
and tore up your everything. If I went into your backyard and didn't see any elephant stomps, seen that everything was intact, there was you didn't contact, like, I see no history of you calling a carpenter or someone to fix up your house. That would be a silence, and I would have good reason to doubt your claim, because it wouldn't be because of the absence of evidence, it would be because there'd be negative evidence against your claim.
Right, but the problem I have with, like, arguments of silence, for example, in the Dark Matters video, the theft of our values, he basically tries to say that scientists back in the Middle Ages would have been atheists had it not been for the big bad oppressive rule of the Catholic Church.
Like, I always find that funny, because they tell Christians all the time, you always take things on faith, but that's a faith proposition, if anything.
Yeah, and
You
definitely.
can't know that for certain.
Yeah, and I was on a recent live stream. What was that?
That was a car going by my house.
Okay, that was weird. Anyway, I was on a live stream with it was like the non sequitur shows after show of the whole Regs versus that pastor, that 22-year-old pastor who's anti-video gaming. And
stupid.
Yeah, and Jade West, who is actually a Catholic, but she's like very liberal-minded in terms of her theology. She said that we can't, we as Christians can't really use the whole this scientist was a Christian, or this guy was a Christian, because we don't know who was really Christian back then due to the rule of the church, and we don't know who was really gay, because the same thing with the rule of the church. So it's like, and as I heard her say that, I'm like, geez, that's a really bad argument from silence, because by that logic, we could probably say that, how do we know Adolf Hitler wasn't really a gay atheist? How do we know al-Baghdadi, who's the leader of ISIS, really isn't a gay atheist?
So, I mean, I find it stupid anyway, because here's another thing I do get on Christians about when they say Isaac Newton was a Christian. No, he was a heretic.
Right, he was a non-Trinitarian Christian, which was heretical at the time.
Well, hell, he was considered a heretic in his own time.
Really? Was he considered heretic by the Anglican Church?
A lot of there's a lot of reasons why he didn't his books weren't published.
He's sounding really muffled. It's like
you sound muffled.
Like the atheist mafia, the skeptic mafia got into his house and wrapped the fucking sack over his head. They're dragging him away.
They're going to turn on the camera. It'll be like an ISIS-style hostage situation.
Well, yeah, I mean, you want an example of what secularist atheists can do to you? Just note that albino snowman used to be a happy little snowman.
Yeah, and then he turned into that monstrosity. Just kidding.
I was enjoying my life in the snow, going to church, and then this roving band of atheists came through my little snow village, destroyed it in the name of I don't know, either Richard Carrier or Harris or whatever. Whatever they felt like doing for the day. And I became angry, and I used my magic hat to some of the powers. Oh my god! I'm sorry. I just saw some very powerful enemies on the game I'm playing. But I used my magic hat and came alive and came to YouTube.
Yeah, but anyway, I was going to ask Mr. Brass, was he considered a heretic by the Anglican Church, Isaac Newton?
I think some of his friends considered him a bit of a heretic. I don't know about his official thing with the church. I think a lot of his work on on what he believed in Jesus actually didn't come out until after he died, because he was worried. He was worried that if he came out with everything he believed in, that he would he would face some repercussions.
Well, the thing of that is that that's kind of my problem I have with see, because like dark matter uses that, and then he says scientists who were atheists were repressed, so there must have been this huge this huge majority of scientists who were atheists back in those days.
Nah. It have been. I mean, Isaac Newton talked about atheists and he called them stupid.
Yeah, but if dark matter tries to say that's hypocritical on his part, because he was a non-Trinitarian Christian, i.e., a heretic. So,
well, hell, we didn't have our first Trinitarian president until Andrew Jackson.
I thought John Quincy Adams was actually Trinitarian.
No, I think he was. I know George Washington wasn't.
Well, I know John Adams was the one who said our Constitution is made only for moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. So, I don't know. And Isaac Newton, I think the thing of it is he was kind of living during the Protestant Reformation when a lot of those heresies would have been more common.
That's true. It's kind of the whole, almost in the thick of it, or the aftermath at least. I'm not good at history, so if I get it wrong, don't be surprised.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, no, to be honest, I'm a little better with modern, like World War II and so on. I like that, but no.
Yeah, I'm really good with history from like 1700 to now. And I like some medieval history, like the Northern Crusades and the Crusades in general. And I do like how there's been a lot of interesting scholarship on the sociology of the Middle Ages, like how medieval people really lived and whatnot. How it wasn't really like the Dark Ages,
as the skeptic.
I mean, hell,
says.
People like Dante's Inferno came out during the Middle Ages.
Right.
So, I mean, there was plenty of literature and stuff in there.
Right.
And great works.
Oh, definitely.
So, I mean, this whole stupid Dark Ages thing is just ridiculous. It's completely unhistorical.
Right, and most historians have rejected it due to the fact there were many scientific advancements, and like the universities, they came out in the Middle Ages.
Chimneys too. Chimneys, I think, came out in the Middle Ages too.
What came out in the Middle Ages?
Chimneys.
Oh yeah, chimneys. Yeah, you're right. And eyeglasses too.
Yeah, and trying to think of another one. Oh yeah, like horseshoes.
Yeah, the three-field system. And
yeah, so, I mean, there was plenty of things that went on back in that day.
Yeah, and it was actually the Catholic Church that lifted restrictions on human dissection that had been previously put on by the Romans.
Yeah,
the pagan Romans.
Funny, like I use this quote all the time from Alan D. Benoist in his book Beyond Human Rights, when he goes into the origin of human rights. He says, the first rupture appeared with Christianity. The Christian religion proclaims, in effect, the unique value of every human being by positing him as a value in of himself. Insofar as he possesses a soul which puts him in direct relation with God, man becomes the bearer of an absolute value. That is to say, of a value which cannot be confused either with his personal qualities or even with his belonging to a particular collective group.
Right.
And I like using that one because Alan D. Benoist is no friend of Christianity. In fact, he's a well-known critique of it.
Really?
Yeah, so when he says, the first rupture of human rights comes from Christianity, that's enemy attestation.
Right, and the thing of it is, I've been trying to look for, or I've been looking into that book, that Inspiring Philosophy recommended. What is it? The History of Medieval Worlds. So, looking into that, it's really interesting.
I actually gave him some of my sources for how, like, and here's what's funny, like, despite like, I gave him some of my sources for atheists being, or non-religious people being more superstitious than church-going people.
Right.
I gave him some of those points, and he said thanks for them.
Yeah.
It was 2
I
books and
told.
a link.
Yeah, and I told him if he needs to debunk bad atheist history on the modern stuff. I'm your guy because I study a lot about like the French Revolution and the de-Christianization campaign. I've studied a lot about Nazi Germany and the role of the church in that. I studied a lot about the communist anti-religious campaigns. So I'm his guy on that.
Here's what's funny, like what they say, like they also will always. I mean, I feel like we have gotten off track of like the abortion topic, but
We got way off track. We kind
Yeah,
of.
why not? Why not? I like talking sometimes.
yeah,
There's nothing much to say about that other than our disappointment.
well, yeah, I mean, it's just I think it has more to do with the secularization of Ireland
Yeah.
than
Well, the
anything
thing of it
else.
is that I heard that Soros pumped in a shit ton of money into pro-choice movements in Ireland. Like part of the reason why it passed through is, from what I heard, was that there was a bunch of people who flew in from as far as Australia in the east to New York in the far west, and they flew in just to vote on that one single topic.
Which is interesting.
Yeah.
Not to mention what the turnout rate for the fucking voters or whatever. They got a
Yeah, but like
70%.
70%.
Yeah, kind
Yeah,
of.
like
And I got chewed up by dogs on Stalker. That's great. I just died. No, but it was just really weird how there's a lot of weird circumstances surrounding the vote.
oh, definitely. The thing of it is, I think is that it's something that Computing Forever. I watched his channel, his video on it. He mentioned that he thinks that he mentioned this briefly. He thinks that Soros is trying to use Ireland as kind of like a puppet for the Eastern European countries. So he he's going to try to enforce his policy, or get his agenda going by like maybe trying to fly in ethnic or Hungarians who live outside of Hungary to go to Hungary so they could vote, because Hungarians who live like in Canada are much more left leaning.
That's
Same thing with
interesting.
like Poland too. Yeah, same thing with like Poland too, and Romania and all those countries.
What I don't understand is why does he want all this? It's very peculiar.
Well, from what I research, is that he's a big time globalist. He wants he envisions Europe and indeed the wider world as like it's going to be like this big global liberal democracy in which religion won't really matter and borders won't really matter. And we can get people from totally hostile and alien cultures to live with one another and under a single roof. And you study history, and human psychology, that doesn't historically work.
Nope. Either one, like it always ends up with one enforcing their values on the other.
Right, and we see that in Europe with the
Muslim
migrants there. Yeah.
Don't worry, just give it around 200 years and Islam will take over.
The European Union will be Europistan.
Yeah.
Which makes me, the thought of that makes me sick to my stomach.
Just give it less, like, I give it less than 200. I mean, I'm not really worried about it because I'll be dead by then, so I don't really care.
Yeah. Well, but hopefully the Eastern European countries will still. I hope that they're taking notes of the recent election or the recent campaign in Ireland. And I hope they're taking notes and paying attention to that. Like, okay, what is the globalist and Soros doing to try to turn Ireland into the next Sweden, and what he has planned for us.
Well, I mean, just get used to Shahira law because that's going to be the global, like within 200 years, that's going to be the global wide law for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think. I don't know. I mean, historically, when you study that part of the world, you tend to notice there's always a pushback. I mean, Europe's never been conquered by Muslims. They've always,
Yeah.
been driven back. Even when Europe was in far worse conditions than it was now. I mean, you think of the
Now,
Battle of Tours.
remember the last time Muslims tried to conquer Europe? The only reason why they really didn't succeed is because of Christians.
Yeah, are you
Mhm.
talking about the Gates of Vienna?
Charles,
Yeah.
Charles Martel, and so on.
In the year 732, I believe.
Yep.
That's what I was referring to. Europe was in a much worse state back then, and they were still able to drive out the invading caliphate.
Yeah. I mean, I just say I know an easy way of stopping the Muslim immigration problem.
What?
Just nuke the places that they're migrating from.
Well, I mean, then that brings in, the humanitarian issue, and
Yeah, well, we can
There
sort that
are-
out afterwards.
There are a number of Christian communities within those places too. Syria
Right,
has a
and also
decent
other-
sized Christian community, and I consider them, just fine.
right, and also
Granted, they're Christian,
non-Muslim.
so.
Well, I mean, the ones that are like 90% Muslim or something.
Yeah, but I don't think that would work, Brass. I mean, you would have the humanitarian issue to deal with. It would be, considered probably genocide by the UN, and then you probably would get like a massive wave of terrorism.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. It would be because in order for it to be genocide, it would have to be because of their race
or religion.
Yeah, well,
or
I mean, it wouldn't be about their race or religion. It would be because they're a strain on resources.
Well, but still, they would still see it as genocide, no matter what. I mean,
yeah, I'm just saying, like, it wouldn't technically be genocide. It would still be inhumane and fucked up. I grant you that, but it wouldn't be genocide by technical terms.
right.
Well, on the leftist states would be they'd go nuts. Antifa would go nuts. All the I don't even want to say it because
that goes back to what I was saying. You would get so many terror attacks at one time. It would be that would only fuel their narrative. I mean, I think ISIS is bad now. I mean, you'd get several 9/11s as well as many other 7/7s and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
You get trucks every day.
Well, I mean, it's the bad thing about being a Muslim pilot, don't you?
What?
Oh God!
They don't teach you how to land.
Another edition of Insensitive Jokes with Mr. Brass.
How many of you like the truck of peace meme?
I have not seen that one yet.
Oh, I posted a funny one where I said, jokes don't kill people. Muslims that don't like jokes kill people.
Yeah. Well, by the way, Draw Muhammad Day just passed, and there wasn't a whole lot of controversy.
Ah, crap! I missed it.
You can still do it and just say you did on May 20th.
Now it won't be good enough for me to draw Muhammad.
Yeah.
I mean, I can still do it, but now it wouldn't be cool.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of interesting because I noticed there's less terrorist attacks recently, around the world.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure now that you mentioned it, that's going to change.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're just, giving it a rest and then, it'll happen again.
Yeah.
I feel that there will be a big wave.
Grows up more, and then they'll happen.
I'll try to.
What'd you say, Brass? I
said just wait until their population gets a little bit bigger, or the mass migration starts happening in more wider succession.
Yeah, I heard by 2050. Yeah, I heard by 2050, Sweden is supposed to be 25% Muslim, and that's even if they cut off all migration.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy.
That's horrible.
It is.
That is just gut-wrenchingly horrible.
Well, and here's my problem with Islam. My problem with Islam is that you look at, in 1910, 24% of the population of the Middle East was Christian. now it's like less than 2% of the Middle Eastern population is Christian. However, you look at the West, it's only grown. It's almost like 10% in Western Europe that are Muslim. So it's like Islam wants to have its cake and eat it at the same time.
I know. Well, all the Christian nations seems to be the ones that are doing good, except like for the ones that maybe in Africa. Although we can kind of say that that's more because they're in war-torn areas than they are about being Christians.
Well, yeah, most of those African countries have just gone over the conflicts of the Cold War and post-Cold War era.
Mm-hmm.
And during the warm years.
Right. Like the Congo had a devastating civil war that killed like 5 million people.
Yeah. That was the most devastating game of Congo ever.
Jeez. So, yeah. Well, we got off topic again, so
it's fine.
We've been going for about an hour, so you guys want to continue, or you know? Okay,
let's
sure.
take it. All right. Bye-bye.
Oh, are we still going, or?
I mean, if you want to keep going, I'm fine with it. But I'm, it's been going on for a while. We could probably just talk after this too.
Oh, Brass left. Hold on. Let's see. Oh, Max just responded. Let's see what he got.
I mean, there's only so much I can provide. My knowledge on this kind of stuff is more generalist, like eclectic, general, limited, I suppose. But
yeah,
it was.
Max is.
Huh?
Max is asking me if I should be an administrator on the Red Pill Religion Discord server. Did I say yes?
He asked me that too, and I was like, "Well, of course, I'd be more than happy. This is a place I absolutely support, so I'd be more than happy to help out any way I can."
Well, the thing of it is, I've always said this too, is that I think we need to be much more active than we are now. Doing one video a day it's a good steady stream, but we need to be. I think we need to be talking, like forming our own after show and doing our own thing.
Well, that's why I'm down for doing the Snowman show more often. Is getting this stuff, because one thing I kind of want to do too. I know I'm talking about my channel and your channel. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I wouldn't mind doing the Snowman after show, and I would also like to do other talks about things that are going on within the skeptic, kind of like a news thing between the skeptic and the theist community, and the debates and so on, and going on top of that, interviews and so on. That's one thing I'd also be interested in, among other things that I plan on doing. When my lazy butt gets around to doing it, but my endless tirade war against transhumanism and the singularity that would be a part of it.
Yeah.
But I mean, no, yeah, I think it's a good step. But with RPR, I think that we see us branching off, and I think that the natural, you're starting to make videos. I'm starting to make videos now, and I'm pretty fucking new to all of this.
Yeah, definitely. I want to do a lecture series where I talk about like the Soviet anti-religion campaign, Nazi Germany's Kirchenkampf, the French Revolution's de-Christianization, the anti-religious campaigns in like Mongolia and Cambodia. There, so
Well, yeah, and when we do that, and then we tie Red Pill religion with it, that's going to gain us more traction. And granted, I'm sure that especially knowing me and my mouth and my mentality towards a lot of the atheist community, because I come off as very hostile, but I've been treated with a lot of hostility in the past, for no warranted reason. Not necessarily from YouTube, but other areas of life. I know that they're gonna, they'll have issues and so on. Because I already know we have a reputation.
Right.
Which can be taken for good or bad, whatever. I'm with these guys until, hopefully until this is all said and done and the skeptic community is utterly obliterated, which I hope will happen someday soon. Not the people, but just their mentality. And if not that, at least their stupid straw man arguments, so they can get onto something that's a little bit more engaging and actual.
Yeah, like Thunderford. the Thunderfoot doesn't even make videos on religion anymore. He even had a video where he talked about why he quit the skeptic community.
Oh, nice. Well, that's one heavy hitter out of the picture. Good.
For now, anyway. You never know.
Oh, like I said, I'm sensing a resurgence because if once they go down to the lowest point to being fringe elements of the YouTube and internet, I guarantee there's going to be a lot of infighting between Christians, primarily between the three major denominations: Orthodox, Catholics, and Protestants. Maybe less so with the Orthodox,
between other believers too. Like Christians versus Baha'is and whatnot.
Yeah, that's just the way that people naturally fight against each other. I mean, it's stupid, when you think about it. And no, I'm not advocating for some, what's all this globalist ideal society. But at the same time, we can at least be civil. But I know how people are, and people aren't fucking civil. You look at YouTube comments and all that, and nobody ever wants to act civil.
Controversy. So YouTube thrives on controversy. So yeah. Also, the thing about the atheist community is that they do have an easier time sticking together because they all generally believe in the same thing. Whereas opposed with Christians, you have different denominations. You have the three major branches, as well as the different denominations, like, say, within Protestantism. And you also have different religions competing. So it's hard for us to make a resurgence.
But at least with that, there'd be more interesting discussions and theological debates than just the standard. You Christians are all the same. No, we're not. Yeah, you are. Okay, here's evidence as to why we're not all the same. Here's evidence to the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. Here's evidence that there could be a God. Here's more evidence. Or here's the examples are.
Yeah, here's evidence that the church wasn't pro-Nazi.
Right, and they will still insist that no matter what, the religious is always completely evil. Which again, I think is odd because there's no grounding for morality within that worldview if you're going to deposit materialistic naturalism. Because it's all deducible to fucking biological determinism and so on. But they insist on continuously going with this. And I honestly am starting to think, they're smart enough to figure shit out. They're smart enough to do the research. They're smart enough to listen to what the other side, the theist and anti-atheist, I suppose, community has been saying. They're smart enough to understand what they're saying and listen to it. Yet they continue knowing the truth as to what they've been disproven with. They continue to perpetuate a bunch of this straw man garbage. And I think part of it is just because the way YouTube works and the way I would say the powers that be above that. I know I'm going all conspiracy theory nut job. This is just my opinion, folks. The powers that be are actively promoting this, and it also goes into a feedback with, well, if I do this, then I'll get popular and so on. It boosts their ego, it boosts their narcissism, it boosts their revenue. So of course they're going to continue to do this, no matter how wrong they are. Right,
and the thing of it is too is that because Silicon Valley and YouTube, the leadership of YouTube they're very kind of they lean towards progressivism and social justice. So they consider atheists to be a marginalized minority. So they'll try to do what they can to promote them because discrimination.
And they can't discrimination. Richard Dawkins, whatever. But
I think I'm gonna close it out here. I think it's a good. Yeah, we kind of got off topic, but whatever. I like talking, and there wasn't really that much to say about it other than our disappointment in it. The whole legalization of abortion in Ireland. So yeah,
I think they'll come to regret it sooner than later. They'll learn their lesson. I would hope. Thanks for having me on again. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, one good thing is that Ireland does have it still has a deeply, religious Catholic population. So maybe there'll be some reforms added to it, hopefully in the near future. So that's a good note to end on. So this is Robert Fried, aka the Russian bot known as Comrade Dmitry, and Das Vidanya, folks.